My question is, do you think the current targeting rule should be addressed? Example, this week with the bang play in the Penn State-Wisconsin game, Ellis Brooks was ejected. Do you think it should change to be a penalty, but only ejection if there is another targeting penalty called against them in the same game? This question was submitted on Saturday after Penn State-Wisconsin. It was a much bigger topic in college football after 4 ejections in the first half of Ole Miss and Louisville. So where are we at with the targeting rule right now, and does it make you concerned or bother you at all with its impact on the sport in general?
I hate it. I'm really tired of the targeting rule. I'm not anti-player safety. I just do not think that this targeting rule is actually making the game much safer. I think it's drastically altering outcomes of the game, and I think the way it's written is poor, and I think it makes it tough on officials, and we could make it better. I actually have some proposed solutions for this. Number one, I do think that we need to go back to the pre-2005 spearing type rule where refs were asked to judge intent. Now, in 2005, we didn't have replay. Now we have replay in college football. I do believe that you can judge intent of a tackle, at least to some extent, by looking at the initial path of the tackler relative to where the ball carrier or receiver was when the tackler went into his tackling motion. For instance, if I'm aiming at your rib cage and you duck into me, my initial path was not at your head. You, as an offensive player, have ducked into that hit. It's unfortunate, but you really shouldn't be able to protect both your ribs and your head via your head or your ribs via ducking and then your head via using the rule. You kind of need to pick one. All right. Part of being a receiver is being tough. You're going to get hit in the ribs. Now we have all these receivers who duck into hits, and then it creates helmet-to-helmet contact, and we get these flags thrown for targeting. No, we teach these defenders to go low, certainly not launch at the head or neck area. If I'm aiming for your belly button, we routinely see this called every week where a guy ducks into it. So I believe we need, because we have replay now, all these are reviewed anyway, so it's not going to slow down the game. I think we can take a second and look at initial path intent, right? If you were not intending to pop a guy in the head and he ducks into you, that should not be a flag, and it most certainly should not be an ejection. I also think we need to take a look at two other intent type things. Number one, did the guy pull up? Do you guys remember the Devin White ejection about 2 or 3 years ago against LSU when they said it was helmet-to-helmet contact with the quarterback, but White already had his hands up and he was trying to pull up? If you're actively in the act of pulling up, you are not delivering a serious blow to somebody, right? You have already evidenced your intent to not target them. I think we need to use intent in that way. I also think we need to kind of use intent for the crown of the helmet type stuff. And this is where I think we need to go back to the pre-2005 spearing rule that they changed. They used to ask, because basically the crown of the helmet targeting rule is essentially spearing, right? Are you trying to spear somebody with the top of your helmet? Way too often we see incidental contact being made in the process of a tackle with the top of the helmet. Because if you guys ever played football, tackles happen fast, man. You can have good intent, right? People are like, go in with your head up. But we're teaching guys to go low. So when you go low, your head naturally drops somewhat. And yeah, you want to try to keep your head up, but it's very easy to have the top of your helmet hit their helmet, especially if they're ducking into you. So I really think we need to look at, is this guy trying to deliver a serious blow with the top of his helmet? Like, it's very clear. Are you spearing or are you not, right? If you're just trying to make a good hard tackle and your helmet ducks a little bit and you're not trying to pop a guy up in the head area, come on, that shouldn't be a penalty. Like, all for player safety, but this is over legislative nonsense. And I think we really could change it without slowing the game down, because we already have review automatically triggered for all targeting penalties. So I'm tired of it. I think we need to change the rule.
I did a poll on Monday, when all this was going on. I just the two answers. It was either, what do you want to do with targeting? Fix it or ditch it. 68% said fix it. 32% said ditch it. I was actually kind of surprised. I thought it would be closer to 50-50. I don't yet. I like a lot of your ideas, but I'm always still concerned though about giving officials like making them have to judge intent and that kind of stuff. And I agree with you. There's some stuff that you can tell just by watching what a guy's intent was, but there's still also a lot of gray areas. And there's a lot of officials who we see mess up basic calls, and I still see them messing up those calls. And I don't think we'd see more reviews, but I do think we'll see longer reviews, which will just lead to sitting around longer and waiting for an answer and just kind of taking away from the flow of the game. I think that for me, whatever we decide to do with this, and I don't think that this is one of those genies that can't be put back in the bottle, just I think for like legal and lawsuit kind of reasons at this point. But whatever we do, I would like to see a little more common sense in the penalty. Like, it should probably just be a 15-yard penalty. We can get rid of the ejection, because I do think that for the most part, while targeting you can't make the game safe with a penalty. You can't punish people and then think the game's going to get safe, because the game at its core is an extremely violent game. It's guys who are large and fast running into each other repeatedly. There's going to be injuries. There's going to be people getting hurt. You can't take that out of the game, or it's a fundamentally different sport. But I do think we have seen some improvement in tackling technique because of the rule, to where now we're getting to the point where every targeting call is kind of one of those things like you're mentioning, where it's, yeah, by the letter of the law, it was targeting, but now we're trying to figure out, well, was this guy lowering his head? What was his intent? It's becoming a little too gray. It's not as black and white as I think it was in the first couple of years of it, where it's pretty simple. Top of your helmet hits the guy in the helmet. That's probably targeting. You should, it goes back to the old adage that they taught us when we were kids: see what you hit. But I do think that get rid of the ejections, not necessarily a straight like yellow card, red card kind of system that you see in soccer, but just
basketball, flagrant 1, flagrant 2.
Yeah, like just determine, like, if a guy does it and it's just one of those things where it's like it happens and it's just a natural thing in the course of a game, all right, that's a 15-yard penalty, I guess. I would rather just get rid of that, but they can't. So no ejection. If the guy's doing it twice, or if it's just an egregious cheap shot, okay, then eject
for kill
him.
shots.
Yeah, but that's already a rule. So it's like, there's so much common sense. And I think that the box the NCAA put itself in was just trying to appease everybody, be like, oh my God, football's unsafe, blah, blah, blah. We got to do something to fix it, or people are going to die. So they just made this rule without really thinking of the long-term consequences it was going to have and the ability to change it in the future. Because now it's one of those things is like, they can't get rid of it, because then they open themselves up to lawsuits, which they opened up themselves to by putting the rule in place to begin with.
I think the most important thing you said there, Tom, and you just reiterated it, was the lawsuit factor. This is not about player safety. It's about money. They cannot subject themselves. And there have already been some payments made, paid out from some schools to players who have died from, head injuries, or what, there's a lot of gray. I used to talk about gray area, like what caused a player actually dying, or what caused the health of a player to decline. So this to me is what it's all about. That's why I don't know. Using a genie out of the bottle, I don't know if we're going back to a pre-2005. I wish we would. Like, I'm with you. I agree with everything both of you guys said. The game is not inherently safe at all. It's the exact opposite. That's why people are drawn toward it. It's a physical contact, violent sport. Here's the thing. Everyone that plays it knows it is.
Yes.
So like, it's easy for people who don't play or have never played to sit here and say, well, we need to do this to make it safe. It's never going to be safe. And if you want it to be safe, then you truly have to go 7-on-7. Like, you just take the pads off, have flags, take the helmets off, which, I don't know, it's kind of starting to look that way the longer we go on. So then how do you fix it? And that's the thing we're trying to hash out here. I don't know if there is a solution. The flagrant 1, flagrant 2, I think would be a great idea. I think I'm totally on board with Bud. Let the officials judge intent. I don't know if you guys remember when they were trying to decipher what was pornography and what wasn't, and the old line was like, it's porn when you see it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that would be me. It's a violent hit worthy of ejection when you see it. Now, you hear a play, which you will hear on the field. If you're ever on a sideline at a college football game or an NFL game, you hear a play and there's a big smack, like there's a collision. Officials are throwing a flag. Because they can't even see what hit what. Where was his helmet? Where was the indicator? Where was the launch? They throw the flag because it's reactionary. They've been taught it's a point of emphasis to eliminate targeting from the game. So they've been taught, when in doubt, throw the flag. Then you slow it down into super slow-mo replay, which if you did this on every play, you could probably find targeting. It's kind of like holding. You could slow down every single play and you'd see two helmets collide a lot more times than you wouldn't. So now you're getting into this area. All right, well, we're going to look at it really slow. By definition, it looks like targeting. I think there were two examples of where you could use your common sense in this one. And the Ole Miss Louisville game was a perfect example of it. First, I think it was a draw. I forget what the play was, but guy comes up to fill the hole. Bam, big hit, play, tackle. I think everybody watching that game is like, what a good defensive play. But sounded violent. Throw the flag, buzz down. You start looking at it. It's, 1,000 frames a second or whatever it is. And you're like, oh, yep, his helmet crown was there, lowered head. Yep, get him out of the game. And then you saw the quarterback run. Corral runs. Louisville defender steps up. He's trying to give himself up. You see the defender kind of look like that spear angle. Quarterback's head goes down. Those are the hits we're trying to eliminate. Pretty easy decision. Get him out of the game. All of this being said, I have one more suggestion for you that maybe, because I hate replay. I think replay you could find, like I said, you could find on every play. What if you just throw the penalty on the field and maybe it's maybe it's level 1, level 2. Maybe there's egregious where you have an ejection, but for the replays and whether they are doled out like penalty, like playing time, have them do it. Have somebody in the conference offices sit down that reviews all the targeting reviews and says, all right, next game, you're out. Like that was egregious. That was worthy of an ejection. You're going to miss the next game. Now, does it impact a Clemson, Georgia player who doesn't have to leave the game in that game, but then the next week against UAB? Like, no. So maybe you're willing to take that risk. But to me, that would be a way better way to legislate. All right, is it worthy of ejection? Because the penalty is too harsh as we sit here right now. It's ridiculous. And I think fans are really getting upset by it. It's going to cost teams games. You could argue it already has. And that's what worries me is you're going to see a big game, fourth quarter, targeting call, player ejected, and the other team's going to take advantage of it, win a game, and it's just people are going to get disinterested. Like, what are we doing? This isn't football.
There are
rigged.
There are 115 FBS teams that if they lose multiple defensive starters are screwed.
Yeah.
And that might even be low. Like you might even be able to make an argument that all but 5 or all but 10. I was going to guess 15 just based on the depth of talent at the top. And you still might be in trouble. But then we get to, okay, now you've given the other offensive staff like someone to pick on. And it could change the game.
What further annoys me, to go to a point of what you were saying, Danny, how it's like you can find it on every play.
Mm-hmm.
Watch a replay of any run play and just watch the offensive and defensive lines. There's 4 or 5 targetings every single damn snap. It's just nobody cares about it because it's in the offensive line. It's like because an offensive lineman and a defensive lineman, you're taught low man wins. How do you get low?
Get your head low.
Get your head low. So what happens? You're immediately ramming your head into the guy across from you's head, and it happens every single play. That's fine. Just don't hit one of the receivers.
Watch the ball carriers. Watch the ball carriers when they run watch Derrick Henry in an NFL game. Like they lead with their head. They're battering rams. They never call that
as a weapon.
Right. And I don't want them to call that. That's what kind of worries me is we might get to a place where they start enforcing that as well. Last thing I wanted to hit on, because I did talk to Terry McCauley. We had a little back and forth on Twitter because he was frustrated from an official standpoint. Now, he's the Sunday Night Football analyst, rules analyst on NBC. He also does the Notre Dame games for NBC, but he also was a longtime NFL and college official, so he's invested in this. He was pushing back on, he's irritated that the officials aren't consistently doling out the same, there's some subjectivity and they're not being consistent in their calls. I didn't really see that. I think they're calling them by the letter of the law, which is part of the problem. The law is wrong. But the thing that was most disheartening to me was he said from 2013 to 2018, like a 5-year period, he was trying to push the flagrant 1, flagrant 2 levels of targeting. And he said the FBS commissioners didn't want any part of it. They would not even listen to him. Now, I do think you start seeing more games like we saw on the national stage, 4 players in one half. Maybe there's enough of an outcry from the fans. And you saw Lane Kiffin, after the game, coaches will call them out. Maybe they address it. but I still think a lot of this is they are terrified of the lawsuits and the money they could lose if, especially if they dialed it back. Oh, you guys really thought that was a good idea? You're going to dial back the rules that you made for player safety. Now you're going to do away with those. I just think it's a complete mess where we are.
So do you guys remember the Reggie Brown hit by Junior Rosegreen, Auburn, Georgia, 2004?
No.
No, not off the top of my head.
Like, go Google this. It is scary as hell. Like Jordan-Hare Stadium's just like totally silent. I mean, Rosegreen just absolutely crushed him. And that was sort of the impetus for the SEC leading the charge on a targeting rule, because spearing just really wasn't called. Like those type of hits are the type of hits that we were trying to take out of the game. That's what the targeting rule was for, really. It's the kill shots, right? It's the very clear defenseless guy. You're leaving your feet. You're absolutely driving up and through with your head-to-head shots, like the shots that paralyze guys, and the hitter, by the way, can be paralyzed from that. These shots that we're seeing now that are getting flagged are not a big deal within the context of how the game of football is played for the most part. I really wonder, because they used to have intent in the rule before they had replay. If we had replay, do you think they ever remove intent? Because I feel like the impetus here, I was reading from Ron Corson, who was the SEC's official back in 2005. I found this article. He's basically talking about how it was almost impossible for them to judge intent at real speed. I really wonder if back in the day, if they had replay, do we have intent in the targeting rule? And if, now that we have replay, we should look at that, I think. I know it's tough, but I think they're really handcuffed by the letter of the law right now, and it leads to some really unfair outcomes.
Totally. And watch any game, and if I'm telling you, if they hear a big hit or you see it on TV, they're almost automatically going to throw the flag. It's been a point of emphasis. What I wish would happen, and we also saw in the Ohio State Minnesota game, remember the roughing the passer where you said he landed on him, or the head to the neck, or hands to the face, like helmet area? There was one really incidental hand, and I know they have to call that, but in the NFL, do you guys remember after the Aaron Rodgers injury, it was going to be a point of emphasis, protect the quarterbacks, and there were a couple tackles in the preseason where quarterback, maybe even weeks 1 and 2, quarterbacks hit, defensive lineman lands on them, and instant penalty. Fans lost their mind. And then all of a sudden, it kind of went away. Like, you could easily call your officials and say, hey, we know we want this to be a point of emphasis. Let's be a little bit more judicious with when we throw out penalties. Like, let's not be so reactionary. I wish that would happen. I don't think it will, but that's a pretty easy fix too. You got the letter of the law, but let's use a little bit of judgment in there as well.
I feel like it's Pavlovian at this point. Like, the ref hears the crowd go, ooh, yes. The flag comes out immediately.
I also think, just to be consistent here, if you get hit by a quote unquote targeting penalty, like if you're the recipient of the hit, if we're going to claim that penalty is serious enough to eject somebody, you better come out of the game. I feel like if we're going to pretend like these hits are that big of a deal, let's put you in concussion protocol right there and have you checked out. You shouldn't be able to just stay on the play. Like, if you're fine, guess what? Probably wasn't that big of a hit. Also, I really think any kind of time when you hit somebody like this or like that, unless you're really bowing up and hitting them forearm or elbow, like hands or forearms that are not, bowed up, should not trigger targeting penalties. Like, you're not launching with an open palm into the quarterback. That's illegal hands to the face, maybe, but that's silliness.